My name is Caiti Maxwell. I fence sabre and I'm 4 times British national champion. I've been preparing for the last few months for the upcoming Olympic Zonal Qualifier, which is happening this weekend. I'm also in my last year of university, so I've been trying to complete my dissertation at the same time as that. The Zonal Qualifiers are going to be happening in Madrid. We're flying out on Friday to compete. I'm competing on Sunday. I think it's a relatively small competition because the European countries each send their top fencer, and then there's a pool and D qualifier, and the winner will go to the Olympics. The last few months we've been having some really intense training leading up to the competition. It's been a really professional training atmosphere for the last 2 months leading up to the zonals. We've had some practice competitions with people from around London and the top fencers. I started fencing at 8 when I went to a new school. My last school hadn't offered any sports, and this new school offered so many different sports, including fencing. I did a taster session and I loved it. And then my best friend decided to stop fencing, and I was really torn about whether I should go and do hockey instead. I kept fencing and I joined Truro Fencing Club, which was actually one of the best clubs in the country. So I was really fortunate to be kind of immediately in a really professional environment. I've literally had Jon as my coach my entire career from when I was 8 until now, so that's really special. I think the great thing about having Jon as a coach has been he's really inspired me in my life as well as in fencing. He's always been there to give me advice on whether it's in school or things going on in my life.
Caiti is a real perfectionist, and I often tell a story about her from when she was a very young fencer. I've been coaching her since she was, I think, 9 years old. And we were doing a very difficult exercise a couple of years after she started fencing. And we were going over and over and over the exercise, trying to improve it. And by the end of the lesson, I said, okay, we've got that about 90% right. So let's move on and come back to it. And she said, does that mean it's 10% wrong? So can we do it again, please? And at that moment, I realized what a perfectionist she was. And it was also a good lesson for me as a coach that sometimes you have to be guided by the fencer.
So obviously Truro is in a really small city. In between moving from Truro to London, I actually moved to Budapest for a year, and that was kind of more of a transition. I actually just trained full time in Budapest, and then I kind of realized actually I did want to get a degree. And obviously London was a great place to be able to train and get my degree. So I moved here, bigger city. It was kind of crazy at first, but it's been great, yeah. I was 18 years old when I moved to Budapest. That was a bit of a shock, actually. I kind of thought it would be fine. My mum was like, are you going to be all right? Like, do you think it will be fine? I was like, yeah. And then when I actually moved out there and I arrived, I realized that it was actually quite a big change, and I was in a country where I didn't speak the same language as everyone else, and I was training in a national team where like I didn't necessarily have a coach specifically looking out for me. And I think it was a bit of a shock, but I did learn so much from it. Some advice I would give to a young athlete looking to move abroad to train full time is like really think about whether that's going to be the right thing for you in your fencing. I learned a lot. I was training with some of the best athletes in the world ranking, and that was a really amazing experience. But what I lost was that kind of close interaction with my coach and the national team, and you realise that kind of supportive team environment is really helpful. I gained a lot of independence from it. I learned like it was really important to have set processes going into training and competition so that I would review my performance and be able to kind of make that a really efficient process where I was constantly learning as opposed to relying on like my coach or, you know, even people like my parents for advice and stuff. So I think in that sense, I became a lot more independent as an athlete, but I realized equally it was important to have your kind of support team around you. I think I've always fenced sabre because, I mean, Truro Fencing Club is, anyone that does sabre will know, it's just like it's a very sabre-oriented club. There were a few foilists there as I was growing up, but it was always sabre. So unless it was for an afternoon, I don't think I've tried any of the others. So I study history at UCL. I'm in my last year now, so I'm going to graduate this summer. It's actually a very academic university, so I didn't go there kind of on the basis that I would be doing fencing. But once I arrived there, I did get placed onto the elite athlete program. They've been really, really helpful to me, kind of sorting out or ironing out any issues that I've had, any clashes with academics, and providing S&C support. Young athlete thinking of going to university, I would highly encourage it. Balancing university with fencing has been really challenging at times, especially when you're trying to fit in having a social life as well. But it's actually been really brilliant, and I think Jon actually always told me that not to think of it as a kind of sacrifice, that I would have to sacrifice anything, because it's a real privilege to be able to kind of do both things that you love in this country. I think that's one thing that we're really good at, is encouraging people to kind of pursue everything that they enjoy. Recently, there's been some really productive conversations about women in sport, and I think it's really good to kind of reflect on our own experiences in this area. I've been so lucky. I've always been surrounded by some amazing female role models, both in my kind of personal life and sporting life. My mum is a really strong, independent, kind of single mother, and so she always encouraged me to pursue what I was interested in and showed me how hard work could get me there. And I think in fencing, I've grown up with a few kind of really strong athletes that have kind of mentored me. I think it's really good to reflect on how sport is really good for us, not only as athletes and in the kind of elite athlete environment, but also to kind of give more confidence to young women. Fencing has helped my resilience because it's taught me not to be afraid to throw myself into scary situations. I think in competitions, we enter competitions and then we get given a really objective result. We get given a number at the end of it, and it's something that we really care about. And you have to learn to fence in these really pressured situations and really embrace the kind of the adrenaline and everyone watching and shouting. Because in fencing, you literally enter a competition, and it's something that you train for every single day. And then at the end of it, you could get cut, or you could get a 128. And then in life generally, you kind of embrace going into these situations where it could just go completely wrong and you could fail, but you don't mind kind of that learning process. Or maybe just that you deal with pressure better, I don't know.
I'm also incredibly proud of what she's achieved over such a long period of time. I've seen her grow up from a young girl into a really successful senior fencer, and I'm really proud she's off to the zonals to try and qualify for the Olympic Games at such a young age. And I've been waiting for this moment, and I've been anticipating it because I saw it very early on that she had the potential to do that, and I think she'll go on to great things over the next few years.
I mean, the Olympics has always been an absolute dream of mine. When I think I was 12, I went to London and I watched some of the older fencers from Truro Fencing Club who I'd grown up. I'd walk into the salon and I would see them training, getting ready for the Olympics, and I went and watched them compete. And I think since then it's been a dream, but it seemed like a kind of achievable dream. And I think I just want to carry on that legacy in British fencing and Truro Fencing Club.